the noise. You know, I was on drugs. I'm drinking all the time. I wasn't going to class and getting ready to flunk out of school. So it was a dark ass time for me. I just remember like smoking a joint, and I'm just like, man, I'm about to make me a ball spray.
Bullseye View. I'm the host with the most, baby. Podcasting for the masses, and I'm coming correct.
Today I have former Titan, my homeboy Bo Scaife in the building. 6th round pick. Bo came through Nashville as the Titan of the game yesterday. My little Titan buddy. What was that experience like, man, after, you know, playing here for all those years and, you know, going out there and the crowd showing you the love that they did?
You know, it's always great to be back to the Ville. The Ville is what gave me my opportunity to fulfill my dream. You know, it was a little surreal just being in the stadium again, and you know when the game is over with the claps and the cheers, they kind of go away. So it was good to feel that love again. A special moment that I did feel, though, you know, I looked to where my mom used to sit. You know, she's no longer with me, so it was a surreal moment. Just, you know, the heavens kind of speaking to me, and even, you know, when we were getting the Tighten Up chant, you know, I know she heard us up there. So yeah, it was good, man. It was a lot of love, and I just wish our team was playing a little better, but exciting to be back, and, you know, I'm glad I could be here with you, my mom.
No, that's what's up. We got a chance to see Amy Adams Strunk, the owner of the Titans. What do you feel? Because when I saw Miss Amy, she really did look dejected. You know, she's not happy with the product that's out there. I didn't have too many words with her. I know you spoke to her a little bit. What do you feel the state of the Titans are, and what needs to be done moving forward, or what could be done to rectify the situation?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question.
Yeah, it is. I did it on purpose,
You know,
man. I did it on purpose. Yeah,
you know,
get to it.
Well, you know, first shout out to Miss Amy. You know, this is I'm sure she didn't sign up for this, you know, when she was born.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
You know, but nevertheless,
but
nevertheless, she has this wonderful opportunity to lead this franchise, and so, you know, I know her plate is full. You know, obviously, with any organization or any successful product, you need a good team around you. So I'm sure that's what her biggest challenge is how does she assemble the right people to, you know, help her lead and get this organization back on the right track.
Let me give you some, bro. I'm here full time, so the chain of commands goes Burke Nighthill, then you got Chad Brinker, and then you got Mike Borgonzi. Those three gentlemen, I'll just call them, you know, the three horsemen that are supposed to be representing and speaking for her and making those right decisions. That's where I'm at with it.
There's obviously steps and levels, and hopefully they can get it done sooner than later. Fans are impatient. They wanna enjoy. They wanna see a good product on the field. Listen, at worst or at minimum, we need to be competitive. Like, I feel like with all the resources that any NFL team has, or any coach, any GM has, you should be able to put a competitive team on the field year after year after year. If your team is bottom thirds, bottom five, you have to really look at your strategy and your process and who you're selecting, who you're putting around you, and really reevaluate that, because there's too many good players and there's too many people in this industry who have experience and success in putting teams together, in drafting players. You know, so that relationship between head coach and GM is obviously very important, and having that owner that believes in your vision to help you put the pieces in place in the team around you. So it's going to boil down to, you know, those guys you talked about and their process of assembling the pieces in the team that we need.
You came in as a 6th round draft pick. 6th round draft picks don't even necessarily make the team. What was your, I guess, mindset coming in and mentality to land a spot on the team, get a second deal, and, you know, become one of the mainstays of the Tennessee Titans during that time?
Well, you know, I have been battling injury, you know, early in my career, high school, college. I tore my ACL 3 times in 5 years. I probably wasn't supposed to make it to the NFL. So, you know, if the odds are 1% of those guys make it to the NFL. What are the odds of the guy who's torn his ACL 3 times to make it? So I already had a chip on my shoulder. If I was able to see and watch these guys make it to the NFL, I think that year I was ranked like the 33rd, 50th tight end or something like that in the country, and only 6 or 7 of us were drafted, and I was one of them. So, my mindset was I always knew I was a good football player. I understood the game mentally. I was probably a little limited physically from injuries and stuff like that, so I had to rely on other stuff mentally just to be able to play at a high level.
You mentioned those injuries. What was that path like?
Dark.
Yeah, for sure.
Dark as hell. Mack Brown told me to quit playing football. And so I think about, like, if I really listened to, the doubts, the noise, I was on drugs, I'm drinking all the time, I wasn't going to class and getting ready to flunk out of school. So it was a dark ass time for me, and just to be able to pull myself out and, find a way, and, that's kind of part of my cannabis story. It was just something that, pills and the alcohol was making me sick. It was clouding my mind, and cannabis kind of always came through and just gave me that clarity to help me navigate through my situation, and just be able to keep fighting. And once, you feel a little bit of hope, you start grabbing onto that. And like I said, I always knew I could play. So once I got back healthy, it was on after that. You just have this chip on your shoulder, and one thing about adversity is it transforms you into a beast. Either you're going to get burned by it or it's going to build you, and it built me. And so even just having the opportunity to get drafted, like once I got to the league, I was like, okay, cool, I'm here. It's showtime now. So I've never doubted my ability. Even coming here and, playing against you in practice, I was like, oh shit, this is the NFL. But, once you get your feet on the ground and you start understanding as things start slowing down, it's just back to playing football. So it doesn't matter where you're from, football is football. And I believed in myself a whole lot when it came to that.
You went to the University of Texas, and, through those times, you obviously had, some guys that were really close to you that kind of helped you through those dark times. I know you mentioned Kyle Shanahan was one of your good friends. I know Chris Sims. Talk about that relationship, man, because to see the success that they have in a lot of guys that you went to school with.
You get blessed with, a few great people in your life. And so to be able to have guys like Chris Sims, like Kyle Shanahan, who, they didn't let me quit. That's really all it came down to. Like, they didn't let me quit, and so I owe a lot to those guys. Kyle wasn't going to let me be lazy and just sit and be depressed. We're going to get up, we're going to go work out. He was redshirting at the time, so, we had nothing that time. We would go work out, and then we would go party, and that's one thing that, was undefeated is hard work. Hard work and that discipline, and, you just build that fight in you once you stay consistent with certain things and you have that discipline in your life. And so, like, at the end of the day, you get healthy and you overcome things and you transform into a stronger version of yourself. And that's how it went down for me. I just transformed in that. And then, being able to have, see other guys. I think vision is huge when it comes to, your dreams and your goals. If you see other guys who you're around achieving things, that burns and motivates you to do it as well. So I've seen other guys going to the league from Texas. I can't help but to be a savage and grow into this great player because I'm surrounded by them, and they not finna let me have step. Otherwise, you ain't gonna be on the field. For sure. So any kind of competitor doesn't settle for being average, and I just wasn't gonna be average.
So you talking about savages and people not being average, man. One of our guys that I got to meet when he was actually at the University of Texas with Steve McNair, that's Vince Young. Talk about VY, man, and when he came to Texas. Did y'all know he was going to, as we call him, Phenom? Did y'all know that he was going to be that guy? And what was VY like in college as a player, and then to where we transformed to when he got to the league, man?
VY had it all coming into, Texas. That's, I think he was probably one of the highest recruited recruits just ever in the country, especially for Texas. So, his first year, he split time. He was holding the clipboard for a little bit early on, and, you saw that burning him up. He was a competitor. And guys like him, you have to get on the field because that's where they grow at. Just like any player, but, for mostly quarterbacks, it's all reps. And so being able to, get on the field, but at the same time, he was humbled early on, just having to sit and watch and just learn and understand the new system and how they want things ran, and you understand the dynamic of the players and the teams, and stepping into a new leadership role. It's all a learning experience for young quarterbacks, especially when you go from the big schools and then obviously into the NFL. You getting that firsthand education. But once he got on the field and he got comfortable, he just turned into the guy we know now. He was just making plays. Making plays with his arms, making plays with his legs, and, even if he wasn't understanding what the plays were sometimes, because it's a lot to digest. It's a lot to digest.
He's making that
he
shit happen.
still find a way to make a play. And I think when you have a guy like that, you just want to help him make plays too.
Right.
And so, his competitiveness is contagious.
So what was Mack Brown and Vince Young's relationship like?
Mack Brown is probably one of the top, if not the top coach I've ever had. Just him just aside from being a coach, he was a great man, which helped make him a great coach. And, we were speaking about the people he put around him, that you put around your team. And like, so he hired great coaches around to support his vision. He was great at communicating the vision to all these 90-plus kids from all different walks of life and get us all on the same page. He taught us how to, grow. He taught us how to communicate. He taught us how to study and understand the game and focus. So just Mack Brown as an individual, he was teaching us how to be a man at a young age. And then from the football side, he set the vision for what we could have if we accomplish A, B, and C.
Right.
He's like, you guys can have this. And he painted it so clear so everybody is moving in this same direction. And I think, when you have some of the older white coaches and then you pair them with some of the, young black kids, from, the crazy situations or the different circumstances, it's an odd dynamic at first because, it's a different psychological, different cultures. And so for Mack Brown to humble himself, to take a step back and try to understand all his players, try to understand his new quarterback, and figure out what he can do to get the best out of him. That's what you got to do. In a way, coaches are psychologists.
Yeah.
You got to learn how to get the best out of people. You got to learn what drives their behavior. You got to learn that what helps them make
it's a disconnect,
great decisions.
and I feel like there's a disconnect in the NFL when it comes to coaches.
They don't build that
players.
bridge. They don't take the time to do that. And we can talk about this.
We're talking about it.
I don't know if Jeff ever did that.
Right.
I don't know if the time was spent to do that because it is a commitment. It is a time commitment. You have to spend time with this individual.
Outside looking in, obviously I was on defense. I honestly feel Jeff could have done more to help Vince. Vince could have done more to help himself. But I say Jeff could have done more because actually he's the leader of our team. And I've seen him do more for players in other positions that weren't Vince Young, as far as supporting and giving help that he didn't provide for V. And,
one thing that pisses me off or it upsets me about just college and the pros is the expectation that we have for young athletes to be perfect. How?
Right.
They're still kids, like you said, and they say with experience comes wisdom. So that means you have to get the experience first to get the wisdom.
The coaches have the experience, so they should be giving the wisdom.
They want the kids to have the wisdom without the experience. And that's backwards. One moment we were just graduating in high school, just got our license, we're just learning all this stuff, math, English, all the type of stuff. And then you expect us just to go out here and be these great Samaritans that are so well polished and
with all this responsibility.
Yeah, it's not realistic. And so we're supposed to be able to learn from the guys that are recruiting us, from the guys that have been there, from the former players. Most of these coaches are former players. They get it. So that's why I love Mack Brown, is because he took time and he made sure that his staff was pouring into his guys,
Right.
pouring into his players, and that's how we learned and grew up fast.
Well, to be fair, man, in the pros is different,
Yeah.
right? So in the pros, you run it through the locker room, so that's why you'll have, like myself, like when you guys get there, because when I got here, it was Steve, it was Eddie, Blaine Bishop, Marcus Robinson, Kevin Dyson, Tamari Roll. Like, these are people that took me under their wing and showed me how to do it. And, that's only 5 years, 6 years between when you get there and then VY gets there. And to be fair to Jeff, he had always run things through the locker room, right? So then maybe that was the time when there was some maybe maturity missing in the locker room, maybe between the departure of Derek Mason, the departure of Eddie George, Samari Roll, Javon Kurtz, it was depleted. I got paid. I looked around. I'm like, damn, where everybody at? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So with that leadership void, I feel like that's where, we got the Chris Hope, we got the Kevin Mawai, we got the David Thornton, you know what I mean, to kind of take us over that hump.
BY was the hottest thing, in the land for a minute. I mean, he just won the greatest game in the history of college football in front of millions of people, and then he steps into, he was the number 3 pick. So, I mean, the expectations and all that stuff was high from day one. What could they have done better? Maybe they should have kept Mack. Was there truly a plan? Or if they really didn't want VY, they wanted Leinart or Cutler or wherever the guy was, it's like they were just accepted who they had.
Right.
And then expect him to go be magical like we saw him, in the Rose Bowls. There's a responsibility that comes with being a quarterback and the ownership that he has to have as a quarterback too. But you got to meet him halfway on this type of stuff too, because this is the first time in his system. And we have Norm Chow, then you get rid of Norm Chow. And then you build a whole new system with Dinger. And, how was that dynamic?
Right.
I don't
know. I wasn't there.
Dinger's cussing everybody out.
I know. Dinger cussed. Look, I played with my rookie year. Dinger was here. And Dinger, he went to Denver. He was here with the first few years, so he helped Steve develop. Steve McNair didn't start right away. He had to hold the clipboard. He also had a back in the backfield that was getting the ball 30 times a game, former Heisman Trophy winner Eddie George. So Steve took about 3 to 4 to 5 years to really develop into that MVP caliber quarterback that the Titans fans know, love, and remember, but they wasn't in the beginning with Houston. They kind of got masked between the transfer between Memphis and Nashville. But then when they get in the stadium, now the Titans is ready, right? That's like by the time Steve is I think in 99, that was year 5 or 6 for Steve. And then Eddie was balling. They had the pieces put together. So now it's even with Cam Ward right now in Tennessee, they have nothing. They have no running game. The Titans don't have a running game right now that's really effective. They're getting hit with the injury bug. Calvin Ridley's hurt. So it's how do you expect a young quarterback to go out there and do the things that he was doing just the year before, like you said, in a totally different system? Now Cam Ward is already on his second play caller in 6-7 weeks. You know what I mean? So to everything you said, I feel like it's
coaching matters, man.
Coaching matters, and these people have to understand you have to cultivate quarterbacks. That's why Baker Mayfield is having success. That's why Sam Darnold is having success. That's why Daniel Jones is having success. And they also have complementary playmakers that are making plays for them when they need it. And that's not happening for Cam Ward in the Tennessee
Every
Titans.
quarterback that has played under Kyle Shanahan, Matt Schaub went to the Pro Bowl.
So
Matt Schaub
so
went to the Pro Bowl.
So what does Kyle say that what is it then? You know what I'm saying? Obviously Kyle is getting it done. So what does he do to cultivate and make that relationship with his quarterbacks?
It seems like
because Brock Purdy gets in there, Mac Jones gets in there, Garoppolo.
They all got paid.
So yeah, quarterback whisperer.
A true quarterback whisperer. There's a lot of guys that say they are, but when you can plug and play and your offense doesn't miss a beat and your guys...
Because the 49ers right now are depleted as a team. They're injury.
They run the ball, like you said. They have a great play action game. It seems like he makes his concept simple for his quarterbacks to understand. Like, hey, 1, 2, boom.
Right.
You know, like you got to simplify the game for that. And so maybe these guys don't know how to do with it. There's a lot of sophistication in making things simple. And, you know, are coaches able to adapt their way of doing things? You can't fit some of these players into these square pegs that you're trying to put them into. You got to find a way to meet them halfway and work to their strengths. There's no reason that Cam Ward shouldn't have easy throws in the first 15 plays. Like
Drake May had simple throws.
Guaranteed completions.
Yeah.
First downs.
You see it all week. You see it all every game. You see it all week. People with these easy throws, their quarterback getting the ball out of their hands.
So what I don't want the Titans to go do is to go do what they just did and just go find any coordinator who, you know, wants a head coaching opportunity. Let's go find someone that is proven. Maybe we need a new coach and a new coordinator. You know, I think that dynamic, so they know each other, is probably a better formula. Like, we need to get 3 to 5 new coaches that understand a similar system together, because so then they're all working and they're not having to teach the quarterback and the coaches.
Right.
You know, I think the alignment is where the Titans need to go in this situation, is find guys that are aligned offensively. Defense is going to be solid, but we need to find a system or a design that's aligned systematically so we can all just be that repetitive thing that Cam is always hearing for no matter what coach it is. They all understand the dynamic of the plays. The league is more grown men who understand football that are from a player standpoint.
Right.
The coaches understand football for sure, right? And they're grown men too. But now you got young guys who are growing into men, who have grown into men, who could be coaches, who are coaches on the field. But, you know, guys like you who understood the assignment, you know what the hell was missing. And so I love the way you were able to push back at our coaches if you heard some bullshit, or if you didn't like an answer, or if you felt like we were doing something that wasn't going to help us on Sunday. And a lot of guys are afraid to speak up in that, right? So I feel like I always respected you because I know you came from a place that was going to help us as a team. You wasn't talking about it for yourself. You were talking about, what the hell are y'all about to do to help us be the whole team be better? Why in the hell are we doing all these dumbass drills? How are these going to help us in the fourth quarter? Because this is real life shit that's going on. You're in the game, so you know what's missing or what we're lacking or what's going on.
It's accountability, man.
It is.
Accountability.
And I don't think there's enough player holding coaches accountable. It's always going to be everybody holding the players accountable. Media, coaches, outside, fan, whatever
Do your
the hell
job,
it is.
bro. My whole shit is like, look, if I'm doing my job, I expect everybody to do their job. You know what I mean? Because the expectation is high of me. You know, the media got the fucking camera in my face after every game asking me all the tough questions. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're doing it on purpose. So if we're not doing it on purpose, everybody need to get on the same damn page. You know what I'm saying? If I got to call your ass out, then I'll call your ass out. And if I'm not doing my job, call me out. But I'm going to do my job. I'm going to be on point.
Yeah, and I think the coaches should be open to that. Like, if we're always preaching this family. We family in here. We're family inside this building, you know?
Life after football. What was your reset, refocus, and repurpose moment?
Probably when you called me and was like, man, we about to go to business school. And I'm like, what? Were you really about to, you wanted us to go back to school? I remember I asked you, like, you for real? Like, is this some easy shit? Like, that's what I remember asking you about. So, you know, I think as you get older,
when you got there, like, yeah, you know what? That's funny you say that, because my whole thing was, you know, I got to a certain point, like, you got a second deal. So I got a certain point where it's like, man, I know I've always known how to expand it further than just be a football player. That's dumb. That doesn't even make sense to me, because at some point you're not going to be able to play football. So then what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? So then I started, like, you know, off season doing these different business courses, and then I found the ones I knew I wanted to get my MBA. And you was somebody that, like, shoot, that was one of the little homies, the young homies at the time. Now, obviously, we're grown men, we don't play that. But, you know, shoot, I remember taking you, like, yo, we going overseas. We're going to go, you know what I'm saying? Just putting you on. And I, you know, like I said, I had vets that did that for me. You know what I'm saying? I saw that you were one that was one of the guys that was going to put in the time, put in the work to make this franchise better, to get the Titans to where we needed to go. So that's why I would take the time to put into you, put into, you know, VY, Pac-Man. I put into everybody that wanted to, you know, wanted to accept it. But yeah, so that school was funny, man. I remember George Washington. None of us really had a clue, you know, but
I think what made it great was being able to walk in there, and for people who don't know, you know, it was an executive MBA program for athletes and celebs. That's how they marketed to it. So it was awesome to be able to walk in there and see other guys like us. I think that was a huge moment for me because, you know, I go back to, you know, having that vision, and that was something a step that we took in our life to help us continue to build the vision that we were trying to create for our life after football. And I remember this one teacher, she was a lady from South Africa. She told us that education is a lifetime benefit. And so I've never forgotten her say that, because it's nothing that no one can take that away from you. And the more you learn, the more you grow, you know, it just helps you make better decisions, you know. And that was a step that I feel like that we took in the right direction to help us plan and start moving in the right direction post-football, because I wasn't all the way out at that point. I mean, it was over in their mind, right, but in my mind, I hadn't clicked that switch yet, you know, but they wasn't coming back to get me. I just had a neck surgery and all type of stuff. It was, you know, it was a wrap. So being able to just align in with a program like that, that's what kind of kicked me off into the next phase of my life.
Word. So now that's the kickoff, and this is where we're at now. Before you got to this, you know, there was something else that you was, we'll get to this. There was something else another product that you had in mind of coming out with. Why don't you tell them about that, man? So I was the guinea pig for that, y'all, FYI.
Well, I remember like this whole thing was created. I was in Houston, and I was, you know, smoking a joint in VY's driveway. And I literally was telling myself, this is the power of cannabis. It just sparks your creativity sometimes. And so I just remember like smoking a joint, and I'm just like, man, I'm about to make me a ball spray.
Ball spray, you heard him right.
Yeah. And so for 2 years, I was going up and down to different places in California, getting samples, talking to people.
Ball spray.
Yeah. Talking to people on how to create and manufacture this spray. And, you know, I remember you was one of the first guys that I gave this to.
I was probably the only motherfucker who did it, bro.
You know, I remember we was in California at the Roosevelt.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, I said, hey man, here's these samples. You know, it had, I can't remember all the ingredients, but I know one of the ingredients was menthol.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, so, you know, I just remember, you know, my dog used it. He's like, when is this shit gonna wear off, man?
Hey man. So that shit was, look, that's how you know I'm a good friend. So this motherfucker has this tube, it's just like a spray. It's the ball spray. I'm like, bro, I would not use ball spray. I would take a shower before I just spray something on my nuts. And like, I'm gonna take a shower. So it's like, yo, it's my man. So I was reluctant, right? I didn't just spray the shit on my balls. Let's be real. Yeah, so yeah, man, I sprayed, and that shit lasts like 30 seconds. I had minty balls, bro. So like I said, the purpose is for you to feel clean and refreshed. It was the opposite. I had to take a shower.
Yeah, that shit was tingling.
So then you pivoted.
That died. That died in business school.
Now talk about this. We have All Pro Cannabis. This is the Supreme. Bo has a cannabis farm in southern Colorado. I believe 400. How many acres?
140.
Tell your story, man.
2016, I had some guys. I've always been a consumer of cannabis. You know, it's helped me in many different ways, just through my injuries and, you know, mental stuff that I've been dealing with, and it's always kind of been, you know, great for me. So, someone told me it would be financially irresponsible for you to not be invested in cannabis, and so literally after I heard that, I figured out how to go get a license, and I'll never forget. I told my dad, I said, "Hey man, I said I'm about to go get a cannabis license." And so I'll never forget. My dad's from southern Arkansas, rural Arkansas, and he was like, "So let me get this right, son." He's like, "You think you just about to go get some land and grow some marijuana?" And I said, "No disrespect, Daddy, that's exactly what I'm about to go do." And I did. I went and got a license, about 140 acres, had city utilities on there. And, I started building. I started with outdoor. I started with a greenhouse. I had a little trailer. And, I'm cycling through growers. I'm learning about the plant. And, for people who don't know, it's a pretty strenuous and rigorous process. It's highly regulated still. So they just not handing out license. They're pricey. They cost a lot. Yeah. They're pricey. A story about that, when I'm submitting my application to they're called the MED, Medical Marijuana Enforcement Division. They're police. We're sitting there going through my application. He's like, "Where's the lease at?" I was like, "I don't got a lease." I was like, "I got the deed." So he was like looking at me. He's like, "Well, how can you afford all this?" I got a little snapshot of, this post football. I'm straight.
Right.
Here's a little snapshot of my checking account. He's just kind of looking at me like kind of in awe. They don't expect me to be able to do this. So
young.
Yeah. So just the resistance that I've had to deal with just getting into the space. But fast forward, I found the operations that fit me. Obviously, I built facilities from the ground up so I can grow the most premium product. The best thing and the most important thing about cannabis is having a clean environment where the plants thrive in. They say if your plants don't grow right, and this is just in gardening in general, you don't blame the plant, you blame the environment. So I found a way to, build an environment and build buildings that, are great for growing this. And that's how the brand was introduced. I call it All Pro because, this is the path and this is the industry that I come from. I believe in, being the best at everything I do. And, All Pro in NFL means you're one of the best. So that's what I came up with. And, here we are. We launched our brand.
What is the three different, what do we got here, though?
So
the blue, the green, and
the
red.
Blue is our hybrids, and then pink is indicas, and then the green is our sativas. That's how we kind of color code everything. These Dear Mamas are, was a new one that I launched after my mom passed. So this is kind of a dedication to her. So all my special strains and new exotic stuff go in there for her. And we got about 20 different strains. We rotate. We're always finding new stuff. Genetics are huge in the space. I really listen to the customers and see how they want to feel and what they're expecting. And, that's how I kind of select strains. So, if someone's looking for something for sleep or, they're...
Yeah, I was just about to ask, how does All Pro play into the medical role of cannabis use?
Well, the whole plant is medicinal. It started from that. That was the whole purpose of it from inception. And, obviously there's a lot of propaganda and stories that come with, why it is looked at the way it is. But, this was a plant from hundreds and hundreds of years ago that they were using for anxiety. They were using for pain. They were using to spark their creativity. They were using to people who were searching for food, or the cavemen. They were trying to suppress their hunger. So these are... this is a plant that's been used for all these different reasons from, way back. So to be able to just be in the space now, and I almost feel like I'm on assignment because there's still people that are locked up in jail and prison right now for, unviolent offenses and just from this plant specifically, so I feel like I have a duty to them. And then also just, with the ancestors, no one really had this opportunity to be in this space. This is truly an industry where you were able to start with everybody else, unlike, every other industry, beverages, food, business.
Been blocked out.
Yeah, we never got to start at the same time with everybody else. So, this is bigger than Bo. It's bigger than, the brand, and it's about bringing and creating a new story and a different narrative of the plant and of the industry. So I'm just consistently excited about it, and I love what I'm doing. And this has definitely been the transition for me in finding out what else I love to do, because it's hard to replace.
Right.
Something like football. Like there's nothing like it. You're the man in the arena.
Right. Was it hard for you when you was done? Like when you were like you said, you went to, for those that don't know, when you were your last year here, where'd you go? You went to Cincinnati, right?
Yeah.
And what's up?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard. You know, I hurt my neck there, and you know, when they say you never know when it's your last play, that is truly real. Like, we don't think that, but you might not play ever again.
Right.
You know, your mentality is like, all right, cool, I'm in rehab, I'm going to be right back out there. But next thing you know, years pass, and you're not getting no phone calls, and, you know, the games are going on. The league is just continuing on.
Now you got a fantasy team.
Yeah. Now you're being asked to join the fantasy teams. You know, so I always tell guys, don't be sad that it's over. Be happy that it happened.
Right.
You know, and they call it in the NFL for a reason, not for long. And I used it as a launching pad into what was next. And I will always be thankful for the game of football because it helped, you know, mold me into the businessman that I am now. Like, a lot of stuff that we use and took to help us make great athletes is the same stuff that you're going to use and carry on to make you a great businessman. I love the competition. A lot of people in business, they don't want that. They don't want that. They don't got to deal with Keith Bullucks. I'm used to dealing with that type of stuff. That stuff don't faze me. We can have the tough conversations. It might get heated. It might get excited. But I know it's because I'm trying to be the best. And if you ain't with that shit, you're not going to be on my team.
Right. That's
you know, what are we here for if we ain't trying to be great at something?
We ain't trying to win. What's the point of playing?
Yeah, so that's the mindset and the mentality I take into All Pro. And, you know, when people actually do buy and consume, I know they feel that love and that commitment with every joint they smoking.
Bo will be a reoccurring guest on the show. Anybody that comes on once is always welcome. So thanks for stopping through Bullseye View. And that's a wrap.
Appreciate you, man.
Bullseye View. I'm the host with the most, baby. Podcasting for the masses, and I'm coming correct.